I was 18 at the time, although commonly mistaken for being in my early teens, and had just finished some errands in town and decided to take a shortcut to catch the bus home. Said shortcut being a narrow street one of the shopping centre's entrances opened onto. It was honestly more of a glorified alleyway, but since the street connected onto the high street and it was the quickest way into the shopping centre, it usually got a decent amount of foot traffic and was extremely safe to use. However, depending on the time of day, there may only be very few, if any, people there, and that was just the case on this day. Just as I was walking out of the entrance and celebrating the fact I wasn't blocked by people standing around talking, a young man around my age startled me by stepping out of a small alcove beside the door and blocking my path.
"Oh, hi there. How are you? Have you been shopping?"
The way he had approached me immediately put me off, but the overly familiar, fancy seeing you here sort of tone he was using made me hesitant for a moment, wondering if it was just someone from high school who recognised me and wanted to say hello. So I muttered, yeah, hi, to stall for a moment while I racked my brain for who it could be. It didn't take me long to confirm I didn't know a good-looking, fit, blonde 20-something-year-old with bright blue eyes and a heavy accent, and since I couldn't think of a good reason someone like that would approach me, my socially awkward, non-confrontational past self decided the best way to deal with the situation was just to dodge around him and leave. But he didn't let me though. Instead of taking the hint, he immediately started walking in stride with me, on the side of the street closest to the road, so that I was between him and the side of a building. When I tried to speed up because I didn't like the feeling of being penned in, he sped up alongside me, keeping me between him and the wall. As off-putting as this already was, he began asking me questions that seemed innocent enough, but all centred around where I was headed, and if anyone was going to be there for me.
"Where are you going now? Have you not finished your shopping? Are you meeting your friends? Maybe I could come with you. Or are you meeting your family instead? Do you have a boyfriend? Is he who you're meeting? Or are you going home? Do you live near here, or are you just getting the bus?"
I'd already asked him to leave me alone once, and he acted like I hadn't even said anything, so I was just ignoring his questions and glancing around desperately hoping someone else would enter the street with us, in case he didn't react well to being asked a second time. And that is why I noticed the second man. He was older, in his late 30s or early 40s, with dark hair, a short but scruffy beard, and had the kind of face and expression that tells you that you might need to be cautious when dealing with this person. I have no idea where he came from. My guess is that he was hiding in the alcove on the other side of the door, but he was now walking in line with us on the opposite side of the road, staring the entire time. I tried not to let either of the men realise I had seen him, while my brain went into overdrive trying to figure out what their endgame was. Were they going to assault me? Surely they wouldn't risk being caught doing that in broad daylight right outside of a shopping centre. Maybe they were just going to rob me. But if they wanted to do that, the blonde could have just grabbed my bag and ran when he had the element of surprise, back when he was hiding behind the door. Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. At the end of the street was an underground parking garage, the entrance of which opened up onto the pavement me and the blonde were walking on, and I'd have to walk right past it because of the way he was penning me in towards the wall. It would take him barely any effort to shove me through it, and the dark-haired man across the street had been toying with something in his pocket that I was worried at first was a weapon. But what if it was car keys? What if they were planning to drag me in there and into a car, take me to who knows where, and do who knows what to me? We were very close to the end of the street now, so I abruptly dropped back behind the blonde and darted towards the road, wanting to get away from the garage and making a beeline for the end of the street without getting within arm's reach of the dark-haired man. The blonde immediately darted after me and blocked my path, herding me back towards the pavement and penning me in so close to the wall this time that my arm was almost scraping across it as I walked. All while still talking to me casually, as if he wasn't doing anything wrong. They obviously knew the game was up at this point though, and when I glanced over to the dark-haired man to check where he was, he locked eyes with me, laughed, and called out to the blonde in a different language. The best I was able to determine later was that it was Eastern European, but not Lithuanian, Polish, Romanian or Russian, saying something that made him laugh too, and doubled down on his "is anyone gonna miss you" questions, while also asking me if I ever had a boyfriend, if I'd ever kissed a boy, would I like him to be my boyfriend, etc, etc. Obviously, I continued to ignore them and was panicking more and more as we approached the garage, but, fortunately for me, The dark-haired man started to lose his patience with the blonde's lack of progress with me and began snapping at him, presumably demanding he get me to answer because the blonde looked worried and his tone was getting more urgent every time he spoke to him. Only a few feet from the garage, the dark-haired man apparently crossed the line because the blonde suddenly looked furious, stopped walking, spun around and started shouting at him. I immediately took the opportunity to bolt for the end of the street, and although I heard the blonde shout at me, and what I assumed was them both running behind me, I managed to get round the corner and lose them by ducking down the next street, and then several more just to be safe. I didn't feel safe enough to go to my original bus stop, just in case they stayed in the area and saw me, so I headed for one several blocks away, on edge and jumping at the slightest thing until I was on the bus and headed home. Although I tried to report the incident to the police, they weren't particularly interested since neither of the men had actually put their hands on me, and I had no proof of what I assumed they were planning to do to me. I never heard about any abductions, assaults or robberies in that area, so I'm hoping they simply gave up after the plan didn't work with me. I'm glad I was paranoid enough to save myself from that situation, but do worry sometimes that another girl wasn't as lucky.